coverage when the gavel comes down here on C-SPAN in just a couple of moments.
The House will be in order. Prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conway.
Let us pray. Dear God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. We ask your special blessing upon the members of this people's house. They face difficult decisions in difficult times, with many forces and interests demanding their attention. In these days, as the second session is poised to be fully engaged, give wisdom to all the members, that they might execute their responsibilities to the benefit of all Americans. Bless them, O God, and be with them and with us all this day and every day to come. May all that is done be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. Pledge of Allegiance will be led today by the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Johnson.
Join with me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair will entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose? Does the gentleman from Ohio? Does gentleman ask unanimous consent?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, here's the simple truth. The Obama administration is driven by a far-left liberal ideology rather than the facts. This administration says it wants to put America back to work, but through its policies is doing right the opposite. For example, because of the EPA's new train wreck of regulation, up to 160 direct jobs will be lost with the accelerated closure of Beverly, Ohio's Muskingum coal-fired power plant. This train wreck of regulation is the most expensive regulation that the EPA has ever mandated. These costs will ultimately be passed on to hardworking families in the form of higher utility rates. This new disastrous regulation will also cost Southern Ohio many indirect jobs related to the coal industry. No matter how you look at it, the President has declared war on the coal industry and the jobs that go with it. It's time for this administration to get serious about creating real jobs, creating an energy policy that puts America first, and end its war on coal. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi arise?
I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, today we pause to mark the 39th anniversary of the Supreme Court ruling of Roe v. Wade. No other Supreme Court case has so directly affected the lives of millions of American people, both those who have been touched by abortion and the millions of unborn children whose lives have been taken since 1973. I and many of my colleagues will continue to speak out on behalf of these unborn children by supporting legislation such as the Life at Conception Act. And I'm thankful we have hundreds of thousands of friends in the fight that have gathered in the streets of Washington this week in memory of so many lives lost. I'm especially grateful to the 150 youth with the Catholic Diocese of Biloxi who have made the trip all the way from my district in South Mississippi. Today I ask my colleagues to join with me and our friends with the March of Life in marking this sad day and resolving to put an end to this murderous practice of taking unborn life. I pray as Christ did in Luke 23:34, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Seek to be recognized for 1 minute to address the House floor.
Does the gentleman seek unanimous consent? Yes. The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor Cleon Kimberling. Dr. Kimberling was recently honored by Colorado State University's Department of Animal Science as the Livestock Leader of the Year. Dr. Kimberling is now 81 years old, has dedicated his life to improving livestock health. Received a degree in veterinary medicine from Colorado State in 1959, and since that time has made significant contributions to the veterinary science field. One of Dr. Kimberling's achievements includes developing tests that contributed to the eradication of brucellosis in the dairy industry. He has also successfully advocated for different nutrition standards for sheep, leading to an overall increase in the health of our sheep herds nationwide. His dedication to animal health started at a very young age when an outbreak of disease occurred on his farm, and since that point he has dedicated a lifetime to veterinary medicine, stopping disease outbreaks and advocating prevention. Aside from his medical successes, he's also an avid cyclist. In fact, his business card states that he specializes in both sheep health and bicycling. At 65, Dr. Kimberling completed a bike trip from Oceanside, California to Bar Harbor, Maine. This trip was over 3,500 miles long. His support for agriculture has helped many farmers and ranchers prevent disease and improve our livestock industry. These stories highlight an amazing man, and I am proud to honor Dr. Cleon Kimberling from the House floor. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, rise to ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute revise.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, Congress now back into session and reconvening, hitting a dubious milestone. The national debt is now larger than the entire economy of the United States. Earlier this month, USA Today reported on this, and the numbers are daunting. The amount of money the federal government owes to its creditors tops $15.25 trillion. President Obama's own budget from last year shows the debt increasing by $1 trillion a year over the next 10 years, topping out at $26 trillion a decade from now. Put into perspective, other countries have similar situations. Greece, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Japan, the very countries that are responsible for the European debt crisis. At the same time, the administration over the last 3 years has pushed a very aggressive spending agenda, which includes a government takeover of health care, government takeover of banks, and $800 billion in stimulus funding. Now, House Republicans have passed well over 20 jobs bills last year that have yet to come up and for a vote in the Senate. I encourage the other body to take up these pieces of legislation. We've got to get our country back to work. We need to grow more taxpayers, not raise taxes. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Does the gentleman seek unanimous consent?
I do seek unanimous consent, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This morning, we learned that Senator Mark Kirk suffered a stroke over the weekend. I know all my colleagues here in the House join me in expressing our thoughts and prayers not only to Senator Kirk, but to his family, his friends, and his staff for a quick and speedy recovery. As many of you know, I succeeded Mark in this body. He served here for 10 years before moving on to the Senate, and he has been a friend and a mentor, and is to this day. And one thing that I know about Mark is that Mark is a fighter. Mark fought for 10 years to represent the people of the 10th District of Illinois, battling human rights violations around the globe, battling for a strong U.S.-Israel relationship, battling for the environment, battling for hardworking American taxpayers. As a senator, he's doing that for the people of Illinois. As a commander in the United States Navy, he's fighting to protect our borders and our way of life. And today he is fighting to make sure that he can come back to the United States Senate to do and work on the things that he holds dear. I join with all of my colleagues in hopes that he will be back here shortly. And I welcome the opportunity to walk across the aisle down here, across the Capitol, and welcome my friend back. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas arise?
Rise and address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Does the gentleman seek unanimous consent?
Yes, ma'am.
The gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to welcome the tens of thousands of people traveling to Washington, D.C. to show their support for the cause of life and give a voice to those who do not have one. Since the ruling of Roe v. Wade 39 years ago, tragically over 50 million abortions have occurred in this country. There are over 3,500 abortions a day, 146 an hour, and sadly, one pregnancy is aborted every 25 seconds. Each year, the March for Life gives Americans who are heartbroken by these tragedies a time to come together and pray for these lost souls and the families and women hurt by the abortion epidemic in this country. As we renew our efforts to support legislation that will restore the sanctity of life, I thank all of these impassioned Americans who today chose to come together in support of life. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
I rise to ask for unanimous consent to address the House floor for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is my privilege to rise today to celebrate the life and mourn the passing of Donald Schneider, a pioneer who transformed the transportation industry through his ingenuity and entrepreneurial spirit. Mr. Schneider, who is Chairman Emeritus and former President of Schneider International, ran one of the nation's largest trucking companies with over 1,200 tractors, 3,500 trailers, and thousands of employees. And some of you may recognize those trucks painted in a distinct shade of orange that travel the highways and byways of America. Mr. Schneider was a hardworking man who began his career driving truck and as a mechanic's assistant at age 18 in his family business. He served in Korea, went to the Wharton School of Business in Philadelphia, and began working in the family business in 1961. Over 3 decades, Mr. Schneider expanded his fleet substantially, using modern management techniques, acquisition of regional companies to grow his business. And again, his leadership pushed Schneider National to one of the largest trucking companies in America and, of course, one of the most successful, especially after deregulation, which occurred in 1980. Donald Schneider was a great man who never lost his common touch. He insisted on being called by his first name, and in a 1970 interview was quoted as saying, my job is important, but not as important as the driver or the people in the service center. That was what Mr. Schneider, that's how he grew his business, caring about the common man, caring about the customer, and growing his business to one of the great businesses in America. Mr. Schneider was a man who served with a true servant's heart, and America has been enriched by his service to this country. I invite all Americans to join me in celebrating his life. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until approximately 4 p.m. today.
Well, as the House gavels out, we are expecting them back at 4 p.m. Eastern, as you heard, for work on a couple of suspension non-controversial bills. All votes will be postponed until 6:30 this evening.